Welcome to Bitter Reality Brewing. Yes, yes. Hopefully this becomes a series. If y'all like it, let me know. If you don't, let me know. I'm gonna start doing 1 gallon batches for a while. I'm still gonna do the 5 and the 6 and the split batch and all the other crazy beers I do. But this is going to be focused on 1 gallon batches. And what are you gonna need to do to brew a 1 gallon batch? You're gonna need some type of a colander. You don't need a brew in a bag. We're not doing brew in a bag. You don't need a brew in a bag because the colander is acting like the bag, okay? And 2 pots. I would recommend, I believe it's 4 gallons, 16 liter pots, just so you have extra. You could probably get away with, I'm not gonna say 2, but maybe like a 3.5 gallon. But yeah, you're a 12 liter maybe even, which is about 3 gallons. But I would just go with 2, 4, be safe, no big deal. What are we brewing today? And what's the special deal with how we're brewing it? Okay, first of all, we're just doing, like I said, 2 pots and a colander, and I'm just gonna toss the grains in, stir it up, let it sit, mash in. Yeah, I'm gonna go over some terms that some people may not know what they are. I'll hopefully explain it in very simple terms so it makes sense to you, because I really hate using analogies or words that people don't understand, and I didn't used to know what mash in. Mash means basically you're bringing some grains into a liquid or water to come up at a certain temperature, and that mash is that set temperature or temperature ranges or step temps where you're changing temp for certain amounts of time. But we're just gonna mash in 1 temp, last 10 minutes. When we go to mash out, I'll bring the temp up a little bit. We're gonna do a sparge, which is where we rinse the grains with a little bit of extra water. Not a requirement, you can dump all the water in there. You may end up using too much water because you're only gonna want 1 gallon when you go here or here. And if you have too much, I'm gonna, super easy. Put a gallon, bring it up just to an edge of a boil, hit it, take it out, mark it with a Sharpie or some sort of a mark, and then from there on, you know what 1 gallon looks like when it's boiling, because when it's boiling, it increases in volume, and I think it's something like 4%, something like that. So it's gonna be a little bit more than when it was cold. That's why it's gonna look a little different. Once it cools down, if you don't have enough, you can always top it off with a little bit more water. If for some reason you have too much, well, yeah, your ABV is probably gonna be a little lower, and it just is what it is. Not a big deal. We all learning from mistakes, sometimes you learn more. But this is going to feature the iGulu for ferment and serve. So we're gonna brew the beer, and then if you don't have an iGulu, yeah, that's why I have this. You can use a 1 gallon with a bubbler, top, pitch your yeast, all good, do your fermentation. The problem here is that this is amazing at temperature control. And I know most people out there go, oh, I can manage temperature control. No, you can't. I thought I could. The majority of people, the temperature does this. It's like, they're awake and it's like 72 degrees. And then they go to bed and it drops down to about 68 degrees. And it's like that all day long for the beer, because they don't have a way to manage the temperature and keep it within about 1 degree. So that's fine. You live, you learn. Your beer may not be quite as good if you got those high spikes and drops and spikes and drops. The tighter you can get that temperature to control where you're at and where you want to be, the better your beer, no matter how you ferment it, no matter how you serve it. The other key that if you're using an iGulu that you can't do here is that you're gonna have to expose this to oxygen when you go to move it into a bottle and cap it. Over here, when it's done fermenting, it's gonna cold crash for a couple days, and we're just gonna start drinking it. That's it. What are we brewing today? We're brewing a Belgian Tripel. That's right, a Belgian Tripel. I thought about doing an IPA, and I'm like, let's do a triple. Triples seem to be almost as popular as IPAs to some of the younger crowd. But we'll do an IPA very soon, I promise. So I'm gonna go ahead, turn this on, which I probably need to plug it in, get the water heated up. The grain, I know you're probably thinking, what are we tossing in here? All grain, 100% all grain. So when you go to buy your grain, whether you're buying it online or you're buying it at a local shop, you can have it pre-crushed. So you don't need a grain crusher, especially if you're new to brewing and you just wanna kind of have fun and experiment. So I did crush mine, but you can have it pre-crushed. Recipe, I was gonna go stupid simple, but it's not that hard. It really isn't. I have 2 pounds of a German Pilsner. Then I have 2 ounces of Carapils. It helps with head retention, kind of nice little froth up there. 2 ounces of aroma malt or aromatic malt. Yeah, aromatic malt, sitting right over there. I was gonna use Victory, but I was out. And I know some of you go, okay, well, you got 2 pounds of Pilsner. Why would you even bother with 2 ounces of something? That's almost 5% of the grain bill. So that will impact the beer. The aromatic malt is nice. It'll give it a little bit more grainy smell, and it will add a little color to it. And then the carapils, like I said, will help with head retention. And then I'm also gonna add 6 ounces of corn sugar to the last 5 minutes of the boil. We're also looking to hit this bad boy with some Saz hops in the beginning. They're US Saz, wasn't able to get the better ones, but hey. And yes, I support the US, but yeah, Saz, yeah, I'm just saying. So we're gonna drop in some Saz hops at a 60-minute boil, and then we're gonna drop some more Saz at the last 5 minutes, and that is going to get us about a 30 IBU, plus or minus a little, because it is a plant, it's gonna be off a little. But needless to say, you want a 20 to 40. A triple is gonna be at about 9%. I think I had this one around 8.6. Yeah, estimated is about 8.6% ABV. So it's up there. And the hops aren't gonna make it bitter. It's just gonna help balance, because the higher that ABV, the more perceived sugar you're gonna taste. Even if it's a very dry beer, you're still gonna think it has a little hint of sweet, and that bitter is gonna balance it, and I don't want a sweet beer, just saying. So, like I said, let me get this heated up. We'll put all this in here. Also, anything I use in this brewing, with the exception of, I have a spoon here somewhere. I'll leave the closest thing to this. I don't think they make this specific spoon anymore. I love that thing, I have 2 of them. But I will leave links down below. If you're considering an iGulu, trust me, I'm getting like less than $10. So this is more for you than me, trust me. Go on their website, throw this in your shopping cart, go to the checkout, I'm not saying you have to buy it, go to the checkout, put in Bitter Reality Brewing, all one word, hit apply. Check out that deal. Yeah, that's a sweet deal, whether it's for you or someone else, amazing deal. So let me go heat this up and we'll resume. Okay, I'm trying to find the right size lid. I think this lid will work. It's just gonna be a little snug, just kind of hanging over the edge a little. It is what it is. The reason you wanna cover it, and technically I could put saran wrap on it, is just you wanna keep the heat in there. I got this up right around 157. I'm looking to mash in, which means to keep the grain at around 152. So 157 would be what they call a strike temperature. 152 would be our mash temperature. We're gonna mash for, you can go 60 minutes, is fine. I'm gonna let it go for 90. I got some other things to do, and I'm gonna keep checking it. Yes, if it starts to drop down to say 148, let's say, and you wanna get it back up around the 150, you have a couple options. You can either put like a little tiny Pyrex in there, get a little liquid, heat it up in your microwave, pour it over, stir it up, or you could apply more heat and stir. Warning with applying heat. You wanna apply just a little, just enough to bring it up a little slow. The problem with applying heat, especially with like this is an induction burner, gets hot very fast, is that it's almost like a microwave. It just does like that. So you wanna bring it up a little, stop, stir, check it, go, oh, hey, I'm good, or I'm not good. You can use something like this, it's a meat probe, candy or cooking probe, and verify the temperatures too. Make sure your temperatures are really close, and if they're not, then you need to use a third device, but this only gets you a surface temp, so that you can make sure you have accurate temps. Why do you need an accurate temp? Well, you want a repeatable process, and you want to make sure you're following the recipe. It's kind of like when you go, I think I followed the recipe, and they go, it doesn't taste right. Yeah, oh, I forgot the salt, or I put too much salt when it asked for sugar, whatever. So we're gonna go ahead and mash in, and I'm gonna let you watch. So I get this, and the only goal with mashing in is basically to put the grain in, make sure it's mixed into the water, and not let clumps. I have 1.5 gallons in here. I have a half a gallon over here that I'm gonna heat up and use to sparge. You only need about 1.5 gallons total, because your boil off is probably gonna be close to a half gallon. If you're like me and you're gonna crank it and it's gonna boil through, I'm gonna boil off almost a gallon in 60 minutes easily with this induction burner. So that's why I'm accounting for a 1 gallon loss in liquid between that and the grain, because when I separate the grain, there's gonna be liquid stuck in here that we're never gonna get out, okay? Things to be aware of. And like I said, you can use spring water, don't use tap water. You can, I don't recommend it, because then you need a Campton tablet and some other things that adds potassium. Go ahead and get yourself a bottle of spring water, costs you like $1 at the local store in most places. And if you can use distilled water, I will tell you the brewing salts that I use. If you want to use reverse osmosis, I will tell you the brewing salts, but remember, reverse osmosis is not the same thing as deionized or distilled water. It has some minerals added back to it to soften it, which is great for like a lager maybe, but if you're doing a stout, you're not going to want that. If you're doing a triple, you could probably get away with it. Yeah, I could have probably gotten away with a gallon of water in here instead of a whole gallon and a half, but that's okay. The less water you have, sometimes it can impact your efficiencies, how much sugars you're going to get out of this, carbs. But when you add too much water, it's just diminishing returns. You're not going to get anything extra out of it. So not a big deal. I'm not worried. If anything, it's just easier to stir and less chance of getting any kind of what I call clumping. There we go. Oh, I love the smell of grains. Grains and hops. I think grains are probably my favorite because it's consistent. Hops are really nice too. They're just not as consistent. Each hop is its own little thing going on. There we go. I'm gonna check my temperatures. That's it. And like I said, I have way too much water. Way too much. I could have easily gotten away with a gallon on this one. I haven't done a 1 gallon batch in I don't know how many years. So it is what it is. I'm not worried. You know, it's that whole live and learn, and sometimes if you don't do it regularly, you forget. But yeah, I got way too much water. I gotta check the temperature. Let's see where we're at. We'll use this, and we'll use this. This is extremely accurate. I've verified this a few times in the past. So let's see what it says. Okay. I'm sitting down around 143. So I definitely have a problem. So I'm gonna turn it on, and I'm gonna stir the hell out of it because I really don't want it to overheat. This is actually a good training thing for anyone out there if you've never done this. So I'm sitting at 143. Like I said, it's gonna heat up really fast. So you need to be careful. I don't understand why oh, you know what? I know why my strike temp, because I had the strike temp and I ran in the house for a minute and came back and forgot to check the temp again. That's why it dropped so low. I was probably sitting below 150 when I mashed in, which means mix the grains. I'm at 146. When I hit 148, I'm just gonna stop and give it a second because there's probably enough residual heat coming in and I don't wanna really spike over. Actually, no, we're trying to go 152. So at 150, I'll stop. There we go. I do a lot of 150 mashes and I wanna go 152. Okay, we're at 148 almost. Told you, it's gonna go fast. That's why I'm stirring so fast. I wanna make sure I don't overshoot my temp. Also check your clock so you know how long you've been mashing. If you're off a little, no big deal. Okay, I'm getting ready to hit 150 and I'm gonna kill it. There we go. Like I said, I was at 149.5, I'm at 150, I was hitting 151, I'm at 149.9. Okay, I can spike it again. Turn it back on, hit boil, and stir. This is the crazy stuff some home brewers do off camera. I do it on camera, I don't care. Okay, I'm at 151, and I'm gonna kill it again. 151.3, 151, 151. I'm maintaining 151.5, 151.3, 151.5. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. It's dropping fast because I took it out of the heat, sorry. 151.3, I'm pretty close. I'm gonna hit it again, but I'm only gonna do it for a very short period. Okay, I'm at 151.9, 1.9.7, okay, that's good. That's close enough. It's bouncing between 0.7 and 0.9. I'm gonna close that up and take this out. And we're just gonna let it sit there for 90 minutes. And I'll make sure I get that as tight as I can. There we go. Why do you want a lid? Well, the lid's gonna keep the heat in. And I may have to put something on these edges to keep that from falling out like that. But it's gonna keep the heat in, and it's gonna keep the moisture in there too, because you don't want it to drip over the sides. I think that's gonna work. That lid's doing a good job. Okay, we'll let this sit here for, like I said, for about 90 minutes. And then I'll take it. Now, during that 90 minutes, I'm not gonna keep hitting the camera. I'm gonna double check the temperature, make sure it's maintaining heat. It will go down a little bit. If it goes down a degree or two, I'm not worried. If it drops 2 degrees within the first 15, 20 minutes, I'm gonna have to worry a little bit. So if you got a cool lid and you got that little hole in the top, some lids have, yeah, you can put your temperature probe through there. Yeah, I used to do that on a different pot. I don't know where the hell I put these lids. If you know, let me know. Let's keep brewing. Got this at 168. It's actually about 165 right now. It went back down. I'm heating it up, as you can hear. I'm heating up that little half gallon of sparge water that I really, really don't need. I've got more than enough water. But because I'm doing a 60-minute boil and knowing that I'm gonna boil off about a gallon of whatever's left, it'll be a little less than a gallon, but that's okay. The grains will retain some of it. I'm going ahead and I'm using it. It's not a big deal. That's the big thing. You kind of find what works for you and you make it a repeatable process. So this is getting back up to 168 Fahrenheit, which is called mashing out, and 168 to 170 Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes. Just kind of like stops all the enzyme activity, whatever, and we'll kill it there. This will get up to about 160, 170. I usually get it up around 170, knowing by the time I'm pouring it over the grains, it's gonna be around 168. That's gonna take a little longer to heat up because this is an induction burner. That is a regular burner, which is a lot slower, but it's only a half gallon of water, so it should be pretty quick. If you have a microwave, you can zap the water. I wouldn't zap the grains, but you can zap the water. I think I'm gonna see if this thing is induction capable. We'll go ahead and we'll move this. Put this over here, turn this back on, hit boil. Ah, it likes it. That's a good thing. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I was gonna do. So we're gonna turn this off so I don't burn myself. We'll leave the induction going, which I'm gonna slide over here out of the way a little bit. Okay. I'm not gonna use this colander. If you have one, you can. I'm gonna use this colander because I like it because of the handle. It's just an empty pot, nothing special. I'm gonna pour this twice. Why am I gonna pour it twice? Because I feel like when I pour it over here, I'm gonna get a little bit of grain that passes through. So then when I move the colander over there and I pour it back over there and rinse it, I can go back to boiling in the same pot. Yeah, method to my madness. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and we're just gonna dump this. That's all I'm doing. See if I can do it enough to where you can kind of see it a little bit here. Now, I'm gonna end up with some grains in there too. I forgot about that. They don't always fall out like they need to. You can either sit and scoop it out, which I probably will. And you can use some of your sparge water to do this too. So it's another option. It's been so long since I've done this way. So that's something I forgot I used to do with the sparge water, is use it to get all the rest of the grains out of the pot, since I'm not doing a brew in a bag. If I did a brew in a bag, I would simply lift the bag out. But you know what? That's one more thing to clean. It's one more thing I have to buy. And I'm trying to keep your costs down. I know you're like, but this is kind of expensive compared to just a 1 gallon glass bottle. Yeah, but this makes, it's like, think of a convenience store that's across the street versus having to go to the grocery store that's on the other side of town all the time. Yeah, plus at that store you have to like pack everything, do everything. Over there you walk in, you walk out, you're done. So probably not the best analogy, but close enough. Let's see where we're at here. Induction burner goes really fast. Yeah, I'm at 135, 140, about 140 and climbing Fahrenheit. So we're gonna be at 168 in no time. So I don't have to worry about a mess. It's a little easier. And that's it, that's the spent grain, as they would call it. Yeah, you can put it in your garden, you can make biscuits out of it, grind it up into more of a flour. And when you're doing the crushed malts, if you don't crush your malts because you don't have a mill, Don't use, you're gonna turn things into flour. That's not the point here. When you're doing it, you're gonna be breaking those grains apart to expose the yummy, shall we say, to put it easy. And without getting into science, yeah, you don't want to turn it into powder. Just trust me on that one. And the reason also we need to get the rest of that grain out of there because we want that to be clean so we can dump it back through and get that water or that pot for brewing. I got the Saz hops. You can buy an ounce. I think this is a whole pound right here. Yeah, it's 1 pound of Saz hops. And it's American Saz hops, so it's at 5.2% alpha acid. But we're only gonna put 0.25, a quarter of an ounce at 60 minutes, and then a quarter of an ounce right at 5 minutes. And that's it. Yeah, I got a whole pound. I got 16 ounces and I'm only using less than an ounce. Okay, let's check our temp here. Yeah, right at 170, we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna turn that off. I'm gonna take that, put it in here. I'm only gonna put about a quarter gallon there. Why? Because if I miss some, I can use the rest. Okay, and this is all I'm doing. I'm just getting that grain out of there and I'm rinsing the grains here. You're just kind of letting the hot water go over the top of the grain bed and it's getting that stuff out of there. And on top of that, it's rinsing any residual sugars off of those grains. And there's the remainder of that crazy hot water. Okay, and we'll do it again. And the key here is just go nice and slow and just kind of rinse everything off. Imagine there's soap on your body and you're trying to rinse it all off. Same thing, you're trying to rinse all the sugars off the grains. You're not gonna see it, you're not gonna know, you're gonna leave some behind, it's fine. Not a big deal. It's gonna drip for a little while, not a big deal. Go a little fast at the very end because I wanna get the rest of that grain out of there. Turn that around. See, it's dripping. And I've noticed it's kinda almost sitting in the liquid. You gotta be careful of that too. So let's do this. Boom, there we go. Yep, boom, sound effects included. Let's move this over here. I've got too many things in my way. I'll clean it up here in a minute. Okay, we'll slide this over here. We'll move this over here. We'll lift it up. Move our induction burner back. Put it on top of our induction burner because we're gonna need that here in a minute. This is gonna drip for a while. I could just dump that back in or I can pour it over the top. I'm debating, I think I'm gonna pour it over the top. I don't think I'm gonna get any more sugar. I might actually lose a little, it might stick in there. The key, what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna get any more bits of grain in here, filtered through. That's the key. You have two options. You can pick up this really heavy hot pot and try to pour it very slowly, or you can get a Pyrex. What I like to do, because it's gonna drip, go up, go down, there we go. That way it doesn't drip. Gonna catch it on the drip. Catching it on the drip. Yeah. And then I'm just gonna pour it over the grains. This is gonna be a while, so I'll speed things up and then we'll start the boil. And I'll get the hops prepared because as soon as we hit boil, we're gonna drop the hops. Can you hear that? Yeah, that's all the liquid pouring through. But it's filtering it. It's helping to filter. This grain bed is helping to filter all the little bits of grain that were still in there. Okay, I'm gonna kick it up so it can get ready for a boil. It's gonna drip for a while. I've got about a half gallon left in here and I'm almost done. I'll just pour it slow. If you wonder why I keep stopping occasionally, it's kind of let it drain. Because if I just dump it in, it's gonna run right through there and we're gonna get just as bad of a problem over here in there. And that's looking pretty good. I'm not seeing much grain floating around in there, which is really good. And here I've got little bits floating on the top. So it's kind of like double filter. Think of it like a double filter. It's essentially what we're doing is filtering it twice. Okay, to speed up the drip process, and I gotta weigh some hops. You may hear a thing that used to be a myth when I started brewing, and it has been debunked. And I've got some grains that didn't pop or get broken, which is a little troubling, not that big of a deal. But the myth is that if you squeeze your grains, you're gonna get tannins like you get from black tea. That has been debunked a long time ago now. So you can put a plate or something like that, like this on top. You can push down and it's gonna drain down there a little faster, which means I don't have to sit and wait for it. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna release a little bit more of the liquid. Knowing that my boil off is gonna be pretty high anyways, I'm not worried. And that is going to kind of help get all that liquid out of there faster. It's gonna help my efficiencies. It's pretty much all pros, very little con. And the con is if I didn't have the high boil off, I might have too much liquid. With the increase in efficiency, it would probably be a wash. If you boil too much off, your efficiencies will be very high because they'll kind of be skewed. They'll be correct. Okay, I don't think I'm getting much more out of that. Okay, you probably haven't heard me talk about sanitation. Well, as long as everything's reasonably clean, you don't have to worry about sanitation until after the boil. Because you're gonna boil everything. You're gonna kill pretty much everything in that boil, so not a big deal. So I'm gonna turn this on. We'll see where we're at. We are at 0 ounces. And for our boil, we have 0.25 SAS for 60 minutes. I've got 0.25. It's pretty much almost nothing in there. Yeah, very little. Smells good though. And then at the end, we got a ½ ounce. Okay, we're at a ½ ounce there. So I have a ½ ounce and a ¼ ounce. There's your ½ ounce SAS hops. Okay, I'm grabbing a little extra camera here, showing you what they call a break. It's where you get all the foam up on top and it starts to break through that and the boil will start. We're just at the very edge of a boil. We're not quite there, but we're getting there. So the boil should start here within a matter of maybe a minute, plus or minus. Okay, there we go. It's the beginning of a rolling boil. And it's gonna pick up a little bit more, but we'll call that a boil. We have 60 minutes. So I just checked my time. I take my ¼ ounce of hops and I just simply dump them in. That's it. That's gonna get stirred up automatically. If you wanna stir it, you can, don't need to, but it's just gonna boil it. It's gonna take the alpha acids, which are a type of acid or a reference to an acid in the hops that are going to help to increase the bitter to balance the residual sweetness that will be left later on. And I am looking to ferment this very dry, but we'll see. I also need to get my 6 ounces of corn sugar ready for the end of the 60 minutes because I'll toss that in when I toss in the last bit of hops. Okay, we're in the last 5 minutes, so I'm gonna go ahead, dump the corn sugar in, make a big splash, big old mess, and the ½ ounce of SAS, or SAS, however you wanna say it. It's all good. And then we wanna stir it because we don't want the corn sugar to scorch on the bottom. And let me check my time. Okay, and you're probably thinking to yourself, how am I gonna cool this down? I don't wanna drop 200 degrees in there. But you have a couple options. You can bring it down to whatever the keg says it can go, and then you can put it in the iGulu and chill it down, and then continue from there. Or what most people are gonna do, especially if you're putting it in like the 1 gallon bottle over here, you're gonna take this, put it in the smallest pot, or at least tallest pot, put it in your kitchen sink, fill the kitchen sink with some cold water, not all the way full. If you go too full, it'll fall over. But you want to put some cold water in there and then just start putting ice around it. You may have to drain it a little bit as it gets warm. First time you do that and you give the pot an ice bath, it's gonna get hot really fast. That's gonna cool down, it's gonna transfer, yeah, physics. But needless to say, you'll drain it, you'll do it again, and you'll notice your wort's gonna come down. Before you pitch your yeast, especially if you're using Belgian yeast, you're probably gonna be fine in the low 70s, but you wanna be somewhere between about 64 and 74 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll be fine, okay? I like to get around 68 and call it a day. So we've got another about 3+ minutes on here. It's boiling, it's all good. It did cool down a little bit when I dumped all that corn sugar in, but not by much. Another little stir. Things you can do too to help clarify this or help with things, you can put a tiny bit of yeast nutrient in if you want. Not a lot required, you're doing a 1 gallon batch here. You can add things like Irish moss, which is actually a type of seaweed. You can do, there's different things. Wort tablet, that's for 5 gallons that you'd want a tiny piece, just chuck it in. There's different things that help pull a lot of that gunk out of suspension. When it's done, I'm gonna pour it over this so we can pull out some of that excess hops. We don't want to just dump them in there. That way, like I said, it'll reduce the amount of trub I have when the yeast is done. So, but we have about 2 minutes now. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. That's it. I'm calling it. Probably a few more seconds going, but it's all good. So, other thing is when I'm dumping it through this, I may dump it through it twice, but what's gonna happen is I'm gonna aerate the wort. And aerating wort, I know some people who are new to this are gonna go, what's wort? Wort is the sugary goodness that you've gotten from the grains or the extract or whatever help make your liquid that's gonna become beer. We don't make beer, we make wort. Yeast makes beer. So the yeast I'm looking to pitch is a little old. So it's got a 36-month maximum shelf life, but I'm right at that edge there. I think it's Saf Ale, BE134. It's a spicy Belgian ale yeast. So I've already put some in water and it's getting kind of milky looking, and then I'm gonna dump that in there and we'll go from there, see how it goes, you know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna go ahead, we gotta cool this down, but I'm gonna go ahead and just dump it over this. Oh yeah, I've got all kinds of green goodness, which is all those hops. That's quite a bit of gunk that would have added up that I wouldn't want. And there we go, we got a little scorch in there, not by much. That'll be an easy clean. Use a little barkeeper's friend will work that out just fine. But as you can see, I've got this green gunk. That's the hops that I just strained out of there. But I'm gonna chill it down and we'll resume. Okay, we're exactly 1 gallon. Like I said, sometimes you have a little bit of an excess boil off. I did, I lost a little bit. So I had to top it off with some more distilled water because that's what I'm using because I'm adding my own brewing salts. But if it was spring water, you do the same thing. You don't use tap water unless it's been treated with a Campton tablet. You just don't, okay? So we're at 1 gallon. I gotta figure this out real quick on what I have that's clean. I can set this in for a second. So we are at 1.075, which means if we end up at 1.011 final gravity, we'll be at 8.6% ABV, which is nice. So we'll set that in there. This is my yeast. It's that dry yeast that I showed you. I add a little bit of water to it, not much. And I'll dump that in there, a little milky. And I know you're looking at it going, I can't really see through that. You know, that looks a little thick. That's okay. It'll fall out of suspension. It's what they call trub or just pretty much debris in the beer. So we're all good. This yeast is a little old. So I'm thinking I'm gonna toss a little extra in and we'll just put some dry in here. I already reconstituted it, which it recommends. So, and over pitching is always safer than under pitching. If you ever hear the word over and under, yeah, over is always safer. So I put some more yeast in there. I'm gonna give it about 2 days to see if it kicks off. If it doesn't for some reason, I've got some Lallemand Abbey Belgian yeast I can toss in, but this should be fine. It's got a nice smell to it, which is a typical smell I would expect. So I'm gonna go ahead, lock it up in here. And I've been debating about the fermentation. It would probably be done in about 7-8 days, but I think I'm gonna go for 10 to be safe. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I think I'm gonna go for 10 days at around 69 degrees. Since this is between, I think it's like 74 and 64, something like that. So I figure that's somewhere up around the middle. We'll set this in here. Make sure you're pinched off. We are. You can pop that in there. Doesn't matter if it's popped in. The CO2 does matter because it will show you if you have too much pressure or not. There's only been one test out there saying that high pressure on a certain lager could make it a little bit more bitter than normal, but it didn't cause any weird off flavors. And pressure fermenting actually reduces off flavors. So keep that in mind. But if you don't want that pressure to get too high, you can release a little, not a big deal. So I'm gonna put the lid on and I'm gonna show you how we're gonna set it up. Okay, so once you turn it on, you're gonna wanna go to craft. Once you get to craft, you hit it. It says pressuring and brew design. We want brew design. I don't see the ability to do step fermentation, which is fine. That's probably coming with the phone. All good. 68 degrees Fahrenheit. We're gonna go to 70 or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Say yes. I don't want 7 days. I'm gonna go for 10 days. It's not gonna hurt it any to go in a few extra days. So I'm gonna go 10. At 10 days, I'm gonna cold crash it for about 2 days, and then I'm gonna go ahead and we can do a taste test. So I say yes, I say, whoops, start. And there it goes. It says it's at 62 degrees Fahrenheit. It's gonna heat it up, and it's gonna ferment. Okay, I know that was a lot of work, but like I said, if you go and buy, if you don't already have an iGulu, and you get an iGulu, you could do a 4-gallon batch and split it into 4 1-gallons, pitch different yeasts. You could dry hop each one differently. You could do so many different experiments. These things don't use very much power. I mean, like I said, you could hook it to a car. So that's really cool. Brewing a 1-gallon does take about as much time as it does to brew a 5-gallon, but it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot more fun for doing all kinds of cool little experiments. The only negative is when you make that most amazing beer ever, hopefully you documented everything because you did a 1-gallon. And if you want to do more, yeah, you could, but I'm gonna have a blast. We're gonna do lots of 1-gallons. We're gonna do an IPA. I'm looking for some British beers, some more Belgian, some American beers. We'll have a lot of fun. Show me some appreciation. I appreciate you. Thank you. And, oh, hey. Cheers. Appreciate it.